Well, I did not expect to be making this video this early on, and yeah, it's weirdly been 3 years since 100 Thieves has not gone to Worlds. 3 years since you get this like despair feeling in your stomach that just now you're stuck for the next, 5 months with nothing to do. And like, I'm a fan of teams. I like having somebody to root for. And by all means, I'll reveal at the end of this video who I'm going to be pulling for throughout LCS playoffs, and then obviously for North America as we go to Worlds. But this is a very foreign feeling for the first time in a while. Let's go through the series, kind of because we have to start. Game 1, the draft was just weird to a certain extent. Like, I don't mind Forest Renata, but I think LS is obviously going to touch on draft way better than I ever could, so I'm not even going to attempt to explain it here, and he already did on the broadcast for like 15 minutes. Look, we just let Summit get monstrally ahead, and then that fight at the Baron Pit where we just let them walk into us and obviously kill us. It was just emblematic of us the entire year for the most part, where it just felt like we did nothing. We wouldn't be proactive, and it would just cause a ton of problems throughout the entire year. I mean, look at Closer, for example, in this game. The Rel that's supposed to be constantly ganking lanes, having these magnet storms that come in and round everybody up, and it just never happened. Pyosik was able to gank, I think it was top lane and mid lane, blow both of their flashes in like one straight gank, like going down, while Closer had nothing. He didn't do anything at all to counteract that, to try and get something back somewhere else. It was just like, what is going on here? How do we continuously just not do anything in the early game and then go into objectives and just feel like we have to force them on the worst turns possible to just flip it and then lose the game from there? It's just annoying. Game 2, we won. We didn't actually win it, though, if we're being entirely honest. We had 2 early kills. We had Kaisa up, 3-0 in terms of kills, 2 items ahead, and we still nearly chucked it. Yes, we were able to come back in the end and make sure that we still secured the victory, but like, I didn't leave that game overly optimistic on 100 Thieves going into game 3 and 4, because like, that's a game where it should be over immediately after we get those leads, and we just systematically break them down, pick them apart, and win the game. And we didn't. And that's with Someday going even in top lane too, for like the one game this series that he was able to go even. Like, well, we still nearly threw it at objectives and gave away our entire gold lead. Like, that should never happen. And it just was like, being honest, the moment I saw that, I was like, oh, we're not gonna get a level 1 like this ever again in this series. And because of that, this feels demonstrably impossible. And game 3 was just impossible before we ever even stepped on the Rift, and also highlights another problem that we had of like, we were so easily readable in draft that it's just like, if any team had flexibility to break out some unique kind of counter picks, like for example the Taric, we're just screwed. Like, the moment we stepped into there was not a single second of that game after drafts were locked in that I thought we could actually win. It was so doomed from the start, because it's like, we have to be insanely proactive early, which was not something that was happening with Closer the entire series, so that wasn't going to happen again. And then from there, they just outscale us so hard, and you have a counter pick in top lane that can just literally win the game. And that's exactly what there's nothing else to say. We just got crushed. Now for game 4, I'm not gonna lie to you, I caught the VOD this morning after I woke up and just kind of saw what happened, but I wasn't there. I went out, we had a birthday celebration, and I'm glad we were out, because look, I guess if you're gonna go out, you gotta go out with a bang. And Closer playing likely his final LCS game on Viego just to get stomped in the same way that we have literally all split just felt poetic to a certain extent. Like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of time harping on the game, so let's get to the individual players and talk about their years, their seasons, before, and try and keep this as like a positive, like, thank you moment before we go to everything else that we got to get to. Starting with Double Lift, he had a pretty good year, if we're being honest. Spring Split was a little bit rough. There were times where he wasn't keeping up with some of the better ADCs in the league, but then come summer, him and Busio were decent together. I wouldn't say that they were phenomenal, but for the most part, they made pretty good plays in lane. They were proactive in how they approached the bot lane, but it just wasn't enough. And unfortunately, you need a team around you to be able to have any sort of level of cohesion or the ability to go further in playoffs, and that's just not what they had. It's unfortunate. And for Doublelift, he's on a 1-year deal, so he is likely done with 100 Thieves. I'll get into this in the next section, but I just want to say to Doublelift, thank you for the year that you did spend on 100 Thieves. If you come back, great. If not, I don't know, sorry you had to deal with so much turmoil. And I do hope that this is like a lesson. If I'm assuming he's playing next year, but whenever he does decide to retire and goes back to co-streaming, like this will hopefully be like a good example along with treats of like, you can sit here and criticize from the side on how the LCS plays and like the macro decisions that we're making, but when you're involved with a team that had some of the worst macro decisions in the entire LCS, then it's a little bit easier to sit there on the sidelines and criticize than it actually is to play the game. So I still enjoyed everything that he did for his team. I enjoyed watching Doublelift play. It was a treasure to actually be able to cheer for a team that Doublelift was on again for the first time since like 2016, 2017 was kind of fun to a certain extent. Busio. Overall, I would say not the strongest year, but he's also a rookie. And I think when you look at the rookies around the LCS, APA has had a decent year. I wouldn't say he's had a phenomenal year, but he benefits from having a lot of good pieces around him, whereas 100 Thieves, that obviously was not the case. Yawn, same thing, playing with Core JJ, pretty much opposite to what Doublelift and him are. But I will say, like, it felt like Busio didn't get to express his creative side a little bit more this year, and I hope that that changes going into next year, and I really do hope that he stays with this team. I don't want us to give up on rookie talent, especially with somebody like Busio, who clearly has the hands for this. It's just a matter of developing him to the point where he'll be like really good on the LCS stage. That might take a year or two, that's fine, but I really want him to stick around. I've seen enough positive things from this year for me to actively want him to not go anywhere else, because I'm so scared of players leaving 100 Thieves, going elsewhere, and then doing like really, really well. And he's a guy that I just know in the right hands with the right team, it's gonna 100% click. And Busio is destined to get an LCS title one day. It's going to happen. And I'd rather it be with 100 Thieves than literally anybody else. So Busio, I'll say thank you for this year, and thank you for the fun plays. I'm sorry we never got to see your Pyke. Sorry we never got to see the Zoe or Camille supports, but I hope you get to bring them out next year. I really do. Let's go with Quid, the shortest tenured player on this roster, the player that I think a lot of people are going to be more down on the most, barring one exception coming later. Look, I'm not going to sit here and excuse the builds that he has. Somebody needs to get in this guy's head and just like get him to understand what's good and what's not. That Tristana build in Game 4 was just absolutely disgusting. But his CSing is like really good in lane, and it feels like Chovy kind of had that meme against him for a while. I'm not saying this kid is Chovy at all, to be very clear. His team fighting can definitely use some work, but it's just like, I don't really know what to say about Quid. I mean, thank you for coming in the split. Thank God we had the fucking LCS Players Union walkout, because otherwise he would have missed half the split, and then it would have been really bad on 100 Thieves for him to come in and play like this, like halfway through the year. Well, that would have been ugly, but him being here pretty much the entire time obviously helped out a lot. Do I think he deserves another chance on this roster? Maybe. I don't know, but it's going to be one of those, if you give him a chance and he does more of this next year, you're really taking a risk and potentially wasting a year. And again, I'm going to save most of that for later. The most wholesome thank you I can possibly give is going to be to Someday. Thank you so much for coming in, stepping in on this roster. We still don't fully know what happened with Tenacity, why he's not playing for 100 Thieves in the LCS, but if anybody was going to replace him, Someday was the guy to do it. And thank you for being here. I don't expect Someday to be on the team next year, whether he retires or goes somewhere else. Sniper's waiting in the wings, and it's time to pull the trigger on that. But Someday's done so much good for this organization for such a long period of time that it's like, I just hope my man leaves 100 Thieves with a smile on his face. I really do. Like, he's nothing but a kind soul. He's been nothing but good for this organization. He held his own at certain parts against Summit this past weekend, and this past season as a whole wasn't his best, but at the end of the day, it got the job done for what we needed him to do. Everything else just kind of collapsed around him. So Someday, thank you, brother. Closer. Look, thank you for the years that you've given us on 100 Thieves. Thank you for the LCS title, for the exciting Lee Sin plays, for the exciting Viego plays, and all the positive memories that have come from your time on 100 Thieves. As fans, despite everything that's happened this year and the amount of flame that you're probably getting, thank you for all the positive memories. That said, this was likely Closer's final split in the LCS. I don't see another team giving him a shot after this. I know we will 100% part ways with Closer or trade him off or something. Like, there's no way he starts for this team next year. I don't know what caused the regression in summer and spring of this year as well. Like, it was just I don't know. It wasn't the Closer that we've been used to, and I don't get why. I don't know what happened. I think he was really hurt whenever he left, because he was the main shot caller. It just allowed him to follow instructions and play, and when we lost that, we had nothing to go on, and that really hurt his career. Now maybe, you know, he pairs up with another shot caller and comes back to success, sure, but like, I don't think many people are going to look at this and be like, okay, that guy's going to be our jungler, is going to lead us to an LCS title. Is like, maybe if you put him in the right environment, but even then it's like, I don't know. I feel bad saying all this, but I just want him to know, again, thank you for everything that you've done. It means more than you think. And I know once the time heals all wounds and people will eventually get over this year and the split, they'll come to remember the positive things that Closer's done for this team. So the roster for next year, we have no clue what's going to happen. The only premises that we know going into this is that the League of Legends department of 100 Thieves and all of their different esports programs have a fiscal responsibility to be at break even come the end of FY24. So how are they going to do this? What roster is this going to look like? And honestly, for most people, it's going to look a little bit more budget. Now, the benefit that we have is that the entirety of the LCS is going to be seeing budget cuts massively going into next year. As revenue for the league drops, believe me, viewership is horrible. Sponsors are probably looking to get out. Like, it's going to look completely different in the LCS next year than it already has this year. And this year was a massive change to previous years. So just be ready for the shrinkage. That the benefit of that is that you'll be able to get some better players and better names if you want them for a cheaper price. But the question is, will that still be break even? And my guess is against it. So starting with Doublelift, which is like the very obvious question, I think he's gone. I think he is going to be able to get some sort of money elsewhere that is higher than the price that he would likely get at 100 Thieves, knowing our situation. And I don't blame him. You're in the final years of your career. You get your bag, man. You do what you need to do, especially if he also wants to go on a team that's like gonna be a guaranteed shot to win the LCS. I think you put him maybe not on Golden Guardians, but like, I don't know what team you put him on, but just there's got to be some sort of roster combination that you can make with him with like top tier talent in the moment that can realistically go on to try and win a title. I just don't think that's going to be us, because we're not going to be willing to shell out for it. So I don't know what ADC will likely go with next year, but there are 3 key starting points to this roster that I think are the most important parts. And that is Sniper, Yukino, and Busio. Look, we do have to highlight this past year the fact that we did have Busio and Tenacity starting for the team, and we cut Tenacity halfway through, and now he's just doing content creation. So like, I know people are going to be very weary about 100 Thieves specifically taking chances on rookie players and developing them, given how Busio didn't really develop as much as you would hope by the end of this year. Quid kind of was what he was, but either way, I'm looking at this team as a very young trio that we can get at a cheaper price, have that core to build around, and bring in 2 veterans in both bottom lane and mid lane to try and help us shot call as we go through and try and help us usher into just a much more well-rounded team. But I do want to play around the young players from North America that we've been building. Sniper, we know, is going to be a prodigy talent in this league, and one of the few players I think might be able to actually keep up with Summit potentially in lane. So like, he's going to be one of those guys that just you gotta have them. You gotta have the right infrastructure in place. The only place that I'd be willing to personally spend money on this roster, like if we have any cap room at all between like whatever that ceiling is for break even, put all of it in your coaching staff, because Nuke Duck and Kane, sure, maybe can stay around. Nuke Duck, I think his year at 100 Thieves is going to be done. I think that's going to be one of the first changes that they make, because our drafts were not great. Now, granted, that could be limited by players, sure, but our drafts all year have been very and it feels like there was no attempts made to like experiment or go above and beyond Busio's first game in the LCS, which was on the Azir. It's just like, Coaching staff has to be like my biggest overhaul this year. If you are going to go with these younger players, you need to bring in coaches that can actually develop them. I don't know who that is. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know people in the LCS scene that would do a good job at that. Maybe Spawn would be a good idea. You know, somebody within the academy scene that's a little bit more used to these guys that can help bring out the best of them and just try and help their development as time goes on. But that's my core that I'm building around, because I think that's the most fiscally responsible move that also focuses on talent development and pieces that you can hopefully keep on the org for a long period of time. And say in 3 years, whenever money potentially comes back to esports, or you have other revenue streams that can help pay for additional talent, then you can build up better pieces of the roster around that. But like Yukino, Sniper, Busio is like that core trio that I'm looking at. Like, you can also build a fan base around that. Just look at NRG right now. The fact that they have Dokla, Contracts, and Palafox like as that trio that has stuck together for so long now, people can buy into that, invest in, and like build a fandom around that. I think you can do that exact same thing with 100 Thieves and these 3 players long term if you just keep them together and let them grow as a unit, let them develop together, and then just continue to push the envelope. This NRG roster is stuck together for such a long period of time despite changing a few pieces around them. Like, that's all you have to do as well. Just, I'm telling you, it can work. I know people are gonna be hesitant and say, oh, this roster is gonna be 10th place. Sure, they're probably gonna be not as great as others in their first split, but like, give it time, and I feel like this roster could develop. And honestly, like, depending on how other rosters look and how import players look, because there's going to be an LCK exodus next year due to the salary cap, I still think this roster goes to the playoffs and could potentially make some damage or cause some noise. And, you know, if they develop very quickly, then sure, maybe Worlds is in the possibilities. But overall, like, I'm looking at like 5th, 6th in their first year to start, and if coaching's good, then keep going from there. And this is just going to be a roster that builds up over time, and the payoff is going to be really, really good with them. So now for the answer to the question that I teased at the beginning, and if you haven't been able to pick up on some of the hints throughout this video, that might be more on you. But I still want to have a team going throughout this playoffs, and there's a very clear-cut organization that I want to support throughout this ride and hope that they make it to Worlds and hope that the roster finally finds success, and that is NRG. I know a lot of people were sour on them whenever they took over CLG, but I've been a big fan of Andy Miller, of everybody in this organization that has helped them get to where they are. I mean, granted, part of that is due to the fact that Optic was tied with them, so I got a very good taste of what like the NRG org was like, or at least like some of the top level executives and people in charge were like. Shout out to Hawk, who's with them as well. Great guy. Unfortunately, I don't own any NRG apparel, so it's going to be very difficult to like show that I'm actually supporting them, barring like the videos that I'm going to be putting out. I love this roster as a core. I love Dokla as an OG Green Wall player. I love Contracts and Palafox as a duo. I hope they can finally get over this hump and finally make it to Worlds. There's something to be said about a roster staying together for this long and hopefully hitting that ceiling, hopefully just getting to that point where they have just not been able to reach and have been so short. I would love to see them contend. I'm not saying that they're going to win the split. I still think C9 is like the clear-cut favorite, and we'll see that later on today. But I'm along for the ride with NRG. For better or for worse, you know, why not get my heart broken twice potentially? So that's it. First full year of TFC under the belt. So my 100 Thieves fans out there that have been watching this, that have been along for the ride, you know, I know it's not the result that we wanted, but at the end of the day, part of the journey is the end. And whenever we do win that second title, when that eventually comes, assuming we don't sell the spot and the LCS doesn't collapse, it's going to be even better. And I think it'll be worth the ride. As for, I do want to give 2 quick thanks here. One, obviously, to all of you that have supported my content, to the 1,000 subscribers that we now have. If you joined because of this series, whether that's as a 100 Thieves fan or as a anti-100 Thieves fan, watching, you know, our downfall each and every week, hey, views are views, and I appreciate that. Hope y'all are coming in. Hope y'all are enjoying the LCS in whatever way you watch it. And it's just been a blast. And secondly, I owe a massive thank you to Jordan and Cole, who are the 100 Talk guys. I know they're not doing their podcast anymore, but they were part of the inspiration that allowed me to start this series. And just embrace my diehard fandom for the organization. I miss this. I miss having this type of investment after Optic left, and this series has done a lot for me to connect me back to the team, to the LCS in a bonding way that I haven't had over the last few years, even despite like the obvious successes of 100 Thieves. This just felt different despite the result, and I'm just happy to be here, and I owe it all to them as a massive thank you for all they've done for both 100 Thieves and myself. And finally, to John Robinson, to the 100 Thieves organization, thanks for, you know, putting this roster together, having us in the LCS. Hope to see a lot of transparency around this org in the off season, given like all the questions about whether teams are going to sell, like everything else. Like I know it's going to be touch and go, but it is what it is. Just keep up the content, because that Subway deal, we put out more content this split than I think 100 Thieves has seen in like the last 2 years, and I don't want that going away, especially during the off season. I know we don't necessarily know what our roster is going to look like, but like if you know you're going to keep Busio, like just make as much content with him as possible. So anyways, I don't want to meander anymore around all this. I need to bring it to an end. I'm just sad to see it go. LFC will obviously be here for Worlds, so it's not like I'm not going to have like that diehard fan content. Thank you all so much. I'll catch you on the next video. I don't know, this sucks, but have a good one. Adios.